I don't even really have a name for it. I don't even know what I'm going to call this. Could just call it what it is. Welcome to another episode of your Family and Consumer Science class. Call it Cooking for Dummies. Your face.
Oh my God. I was just thinking that.
All right, so what should I call this? Great minds think. Yeah, great minds think alike. Welcome to Quarantine Cuisine with your host, Chef Duffy. Chef B. Actually, don't call me chef at all because I'm not a chef. I have never taken a formal cooking class. Well, they can call me Mrs. D because this is for my students, right? Have you ever bought bananas and completely forgotten about them and they turned all brown and mushy and gross? Yeah? And then you throw them away, right? And they stink up the garbage can. You don't have to do that. You can always throw them in the freezer for later use. Yes, you can use them. One great use for overly ripe bananas is banana bread. But before we get started, we need to actually do the things that one should do before cooking. I'm going to start off by donning an apron and head cover. Now, generally at home, you wouldn't have to worry about putting on a head cover because your family shouldn't care if your hair is in their food. Although they do. They get really upset about that. Not that my mom ever cared. She would gleefully tell us when she cut her finger and bled all over the food when she was making it. Easiest way to do a head cover is to take a handkerchief, most of us have them, and then fold it. Don't fold it all the way in half because if you do, it's probably going to be too small for your big head. Flip it over and on top and simply tie it in the back. And then you look like a pirate. Arg. All right, before we really get started, we should probably clean things up. Really great way of cleaning up is by using disinfectant wipes. You should always clean all of your surfaces before cooking. So today we're going to make banana bread. Start off, and I highly recommend using recipes. Husband found this. Where'd you get it? Ark? Goodwill?
Yep.
Somewhere. Ark or Goodwill. You can find really expensive, great cooking books for really cheap at any Ark or Goodwill. This one is especially cool. As a matter of fact, he found a recipe that I fell in love with. Oh crap, now I can't remember. Where was it? It was under bread. One of the first things that you want to do whenever you are about to cook is to read through your recipe. Next up, we need to get all the ingredients and all the equipment before beginning. If your recipe calls for ingredients that are generally kept in the refrigerator, you want to pull them out ahead of time in order for them to come out to room temperature. They're a lot easier to use when at room temperature. In this case, we need to pull out the butter, the cream cheese, and the eggs. I want to pull the bananas out because they've been sitting in the freezer right beside the mice for the snake. Overly ripe bananas, yum. Butter, cream cheese, and the eggs. They are very good. They come from the chicken. Overly ripe bananas, yum. And thanks to the magic of editing, they're already thawed. So again, we need to read through our recipe to make sure that we have everything that we are going to need. Which means we've gotten our butter out, we've gotten our cream cheese out, we've gotten our eggs out, we've gotten our overly ripe and very squishy bananas out. Next up, we need sugar, vanilla extract, all-purpose flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt, and pecans. Guess better get all that. Okay, next up, we need to make sure that we've got all of our measuring instruments, measuring cups, measuring spoons, measuring implements. Utensils, okay. Next up, we're going to pull out all of our measuring utensils. Now, it's very important to make sure that you are using dry ingredient cups for your dry ingredients. Quick quiz. Are we going to use this or are we going to use one of these? Do you know? Anybody? For your dry ingredients? Very good. According to this, we are going to need 3/4 cup butter, softened. Great thing is with the butter, we don't have to measure it out because it's got little lines on it that lets you know how much you need. 2 cups sugar. Sugar is a dry ingredient, so we need a dry ingredient measuring device. And then 1/2 teaspoon. So we need a teaspoon. That says 1/4. That's TISP, TSP. Okay, according to this recipe, we need a large mixing bowl in order to cream the butter, the cheese, and the sugar until it is light and fluffy. At this point, you want to either pull out your hand mixer and a bowl or your mixer. Now, I got fancy and I have a really nice KitchenAid. Here's the thing, don't go and spend a lot of money on these things. Check Craigslist, trust me. Now, the other important thing that I want to tell you is to be sure that you store heavy devices on low shelves. And this thing is really heavy and it's kind of squished into a really odd spot. So give me a few minutes while I try to figure out how to get this thing out. And then that's going to be too heavy. Okay, so this thing is extremely heavy. So thanks to the magic of editing, voila. Okay, but we're not done prepping yet. As I read through this, I realize that, of course, I have to actually bake this stuff. Well, what do I need? It says to get 2 greased 8-inch by 4-inch by 2-inch loaf pans. No, we're not going to bother with that. We are, but we aren't. We're not going to grease them. I'm going to teach you a nice little trick that I've been using the last couple times I've made this. First of all, you do get your pans. These are bread pans. And as you can see, they're kind of old and rusty, but that is okay because we have aluminum foil. Aluminum foil. Take the aluminum foil. Aluminum foil. Take a nice, largish rectangular piece and press it into your pan, whether or not it happens to be a little bit on the rusty side. Because when we're done baking these, we can take them out, use that same tin foil to wrap them up in, and we can store them easier. They don't need to be smooth. As a matter of fact, it's usually better when it's not smooth because food doesn't stick as badly to foil that's been crinkled up. It says that we are going to be baking these for 1 to 1 1/4 hour or until a toothpick comes out nice and clean, and I'll show you how to do that later, at 350 degrees. So it takes a little while for things to heat up. So we're going to go ahead and preheat the oven. Okay, so we're going to hit bake, then we hit the arrows. Automatically comes up to 350. Now, if you have something similar to this, then it starts preheating automatically. Sometimes you actually have to hit start, so be aware of that. Okay, as everybody knows, it's extremely important to wash your hands. Whether or not you're doing it properly is a different matter entirely. I'm sure everybody by now has heard that you need to sing the birthday song twice in order to properly wash your hands. Yes and no. I'm going to show you the best way of making sure your hands are absolutely clean before you get going. So step number 1 is you want to go ahead and turn the water on because you want to get it as warm as you can possibly stand it. Step 2, we want to wet our hands. Actually, you want to wet all the way to your elbows. Why? We're going to treat this like surgery. If you ever watch those medical shows, they wash from tip to elbow. Next, we're going to apply the soap. Now, at this point, you usually start singing Happy Birthday or Baby Shark or whatever it is you think is going to be the proper amount of time. What we're going to do is we're going to get lathered up. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next, we're going to get the back of the hands and all the way down to the elbows. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's get the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice I'm not singing. Why? Because you don't want me to. Next, we need to get in between the fingers. Now, a lot of people actually don't end up getting your thumbs. So this is how we are going to wash. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And now we're going to switch. So we're getting the outside of this thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we are going to get all the little cracks and crevices within our hands. So we're going to use whatever fingernails we might have and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flip it over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, make sure that we're not going to scald ourselves on the now rather warm water. And we're going to get all of the suds off. Now, at this point, if you're at home, you probably are going to use a towel. However, you probably don't actually want to use a towel because towels can hold bacteria. So generally speaking, we are going to use disposable towels. We're going to dry off. And now we are ready to cook. Another part of the prep is going to be working with the pecans. Now, do you have to have pecans in your banana bread? No, you do not, especially since they are ridiculously expensive. All right, so according to this, there are 16 ounces. It says we need to use 2 cups of pecans. Now, generally, you would think that 16 ounces means that you have 2 cups, right? But no, this says it contains about 4 cups. So this is actually talking about how much it weighs. We're going to need to do some measuring now. Also, these are halves, and we need to have them nice and tiny. So let's work on getting that done. Now, it's important to remember, when cutting, you do not ever do it like this. You take your thumb and your forefinger, you grasp it like so, and then you wrap your fingers around the handle. You are not going to pick the knife up. You are going to put the tip down and you are going to rock. Finally, we have 2 cups of chopped pecans. Now that we've finished all of our prep work, we can start actually putting this together. Okay, so it says here, in a large mixing bowl, cream the butter, cream cheese, and sugar until light and fluffy. The butter, as it stands, is nice and soft. It is not in liquid form, so we are going to make it even creamier. It calls for 3/4 cup of butter. All right, gang, for those of us that aren't that great at math, let's take a close look at this. It says, as you can see here, it says 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup. Ladies and gentlemen, if 4 tablespoons, and see the tablespoons are clearly marked, if 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup, how do we get 3/4 cup? Well, 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4, right? So we need to multiply that 4 tablespoons by 3. So now we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which means we need 4 more. So all we have to do is cut it in half in order to get our 12 tablespoons or 3/4 cup. I hope that explanation was okay. I'm not a math teacher. Sorry. Okay, so now we are going to cream the butter. We want to lock this down so it doesn't come up. And now I'm going to go around on the other side and turn it on. You see how soft that is? All right, so we are what we call creaming the butter. All right, so we're also supposed to cream in the cream cheese. 1 package, which equals 8 ounces. Again, we have brought this to room temperature, so it's about as squishy right now as the bananas are. Oh my goodness, open! Cream cheese. Do what? Oh yeah, I mean that's pretty normal. Remember, I work with middle schoolers. 2 cups. We need 2 cups of sugar that we are going to add to the creaming process. Now, if you were paying attention when I was gathering all my implements, you would remember, if I didn't edit it out, that I could only find a half cup. I need 2 cups of sugar. So, quick math thing here, guys. How many half cups do we need in order to get our 2 cups of sugar? What's that? That's right, 4. 4 half cups would equal 2 full cups of sugar. When working with dry ingredients, it's usually good to use a butter knife or a spatula. And this is how you do it. Scoop out the dry ingredient and use the back of the butter knife to flatten it out. What do you think? Does that look like light and fluffy to you? I think it is. So once we have creamed this together and it's nice and fluffy, next thing we're going to do is we are going to add the eggs one at a time, beating well after each addition. So lock this back down, turn it back on. Now, cracking your eggs. Okay, so while I was moving the camera, my husband gave me some very sound advice on how to tell you how to crack an egg. Make sure, first of all, that you have a good hard surface, not a flat surface, but a good hard surface, such as the side of this bowl. Hold it firmly and pop it only once. And as you can see, whoops, maybe you can't. No, there we go. And bloop. Now I just used one hand, and of course if I were making egg sunny side up, that would have sucked because if you can see in here, it dribbled all over the place. All right, so Dave, give me the 3 steps again. Step 1, crack it 1 time, get your thumbs in. I nearly forgot, we've got to thoroughly mix that 1 egg in. Okay, so the first egg is nice and in. Now as you can see, I have a nice little crack there. I'm getting my thumbs in, pull it apart, and drop it in. That was awkward. Next up, we are going to put in the squishy bananas. This recipe calls for 1.5 cups mashed ripe bananas, about 4 medium size. We have about 4 medium size, overly ripe, very squishy, already squishy bananas. So you can see the overly ripe bananas are extremely easy to pull apart, and they're all slimy and gross looking. But that means that they're just really perfect for making banana bread. And I know the recipe said to squish them, but you know what? Based on how squishy these already are, you really don't have to. Ew, they look like slugs. Seriously, they do. They're so gross. Woo. Here we have pure vanilla extract. You want to be careful, and it's usually better if instead of taking the top off when you get these new, just poke a little hole in them. Now, you want to carefully pour this in, and what you want to do is you want to create a slight dome effect. Very slight dome and more of a mess than anything. And here we go. Okay, so after taking a quick break to perform some mise en place, getting all my station cleaned up and things put away that I don't need anymore, and resetting the camera, we're back to the recipe. We've creamed the butter, we've creamed the cheese, we've added the sugar and made all that light and fluffy. We've added the eggs 1 at a time and we beat them in really well. Then we added the vanilla. Next we are supposed to combine the flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt, and add that to the creamed mixture. So we're going to move this to the side for now. Oh, dude. All right, so next we're going to mix in all the dry ingredients, which means we need to have 3 cups of all-purpose flour. We need to add a half a teaspoon of baking powder, of baking soda, and of salt. Now, when it comes to flour, when you're out shopping, be aware that there's a ton of different types of flours. There's gluten-free, I think. Isn't there actually gluten-free flour now? Yep. So there's gluten-free flour, there's wheat flour, there is all-purpose flour, there's so many different types of flours, it's ridiculous. I'm going to open up our flour, get our handy-dandy butter knife. Now remember, we only had a half cup. In order to get 3 cups, how many cups do we need? Do the math. We need to do 6 of these in order to get 3 cups. Next, we add in half a teaspoon of baking soda. The Thai ones, I usually just scrape it along whatever container it's in. Then we add the baking powder again. That's half a teaspoon. And then the salt. Like I said, I'm almost out of salt, and there's a lot of rice in there, so we need to do something about that. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and use this, give it a quick twirl. Yeah, if you're not really careful, you will splash flour all over the place. And this is on the low setting. All right, I'm going to slow this down. I'm going to turn it off for a second. The one thing that you really, really have to be careful about with any type of baking, cookies or bread, crusts, things like that, is you don't want to over mix. See, right now this is still light and fluffy. If we continue to mix it for much longer, it could very easily become rubbery. Okay, the recipe calls for us to fold in 1 cup of pecan. I have misplaced my single cup, so we have to use half a cup. So math again. How many half cups do we have to use in order to get 1 full cup? What's that? That's right. We need to have 2 of these to equal 1 cup. Now it says to fold them in. So we literally fold the batter over the pecans. Next up, we need to split the dough in between the 2 pans that we prepped earlier. Actually, we partially prepped them. I know the original recipe I read off, you had to grease it. But like I said, I like to use a tin foil, and then I give each pan a brief spritz with some aerosol cooking spray, just to be on the safe side. Next, we're going to take the other bit that we have left from the pecans and we're going to sprinkle over the top. Finally, we get to put them into the oven. Now, since I have made them slightly less thick than you normally would, since I'm going to make 4 smaller loaves instead of 2 large loaves, I'm going to check them in every 15 minutes after the first half hour. Now, I'm going to be sliding these into the middle section in the center. I'm going to set for 30 minutes. When baking and pulling stuff out of your oven, always use a mitt. Now, in order to check to see if they're cooked or not, we're going to take your typical toothpick and we're going to stick it in the center and pull it out. If it comes out clean, ta-da, then it's all cooked. So we've learned that it only takes about half an hour to do these smaller versions. Ooh, don't those look gorgeous? So with the technique we used, all we have to do is pop them straight out. We'll leave them here to cool for a bit, and then we can just use tin foil that we baked them in, wrap them up, we'll put them in the pantry, put them in the refrigerator. I usually like to freeze some of them and keep them for later. There will be a test. I hope you're paying attention and taking notes. Even if you don't bake it, you do have to test on it. See you next time.